This is the evolution of how internet, anytime you introduce a new technology into communication, people find new and creative ways to do it. And so originally, it was about banners and clicks. And then what happened is they found out the viral effect, that essentially instead of telling two friends who tell two friends and so on, all of a sudden you could tell 100 of your friends who tell 100 of their friends and so on. In 1999 is when they started becoming data targeting. That's when they started asking you to use your data. In 2000, it was all about buzz. Then we went to mobile marketing. In 2003, we went into search marketing. And essentially, when you go searching around for something, they find you. They know you're in the funnel. In 2009, we went to pay to say. But essentially, they found out that bloggers and people like that, or people who have monster email lists, we pay them to help spread the word about us. And now it's in 2006, that's when they start doing embedded marketing, which, to tell you the truth, I don't think works very well. Just because you put an ad in the middle of an article, my eyes just flip over it. So the thing is, new technology, especially digital technology, it demands your focus. Like you look at something on your phone, what are you doing? You're looking at it. But it becomes less and less of a sharing experience because we want everything to be personalized. One joke Jennifer Aniston said is that the TV program Friends would never work today. And she said it would never work today because instead of having a bunch of friends sitting around in a coffee shop talking, you just have a bunch of friends sitting around in a coffee shop with everybody looking at their cell phones. I thought she actually had a point there. So we look at the evolution. Originally, mankind got together. We were tribal animals. And then radio came along, but still the family would congregate around the radio. There's a movie, Avalon, that talks about, they believe, the end of our social structure, where like you had 3 generations, you had children, parents, and grandparents all living together, start to fall apart with television. And then finally we have the internet. And so the thing is, the internet is a mixed bag, and so you have to be careful with your communication on creating the objective of bringing people together, because the internet has a tendency to reduce intimacy. There's a difference between personalization and intimacy. Personalization means I am specifically targeting you. Intimacy is I'm targeting you, but I'm also building up a trust and a relationship between us. And the other thing you have to also keep in mind is that it affects your brand. You don't want to lose the strength of it. So when we look at response rates, here's the interesting thing. The telephone still is champ, and internet displays are the worst, and email is pretty bad also. But the thing is, people can't help but pick up the phone. On the other hand, when you look at the cost of these things, the big advantage of email is it's cheap. And internet displays are turning out to be a lot less efficient. But why do we still do it anyway? Look at ASU. They've got banners and ads everywhere. Well, the point is that other people look at other people's screens, and essentially what you're trying to do is dominate the conversation. So it's almost like billboards on the roadway. When we look at return on investment, email is still number 1. And the reason why is because it's just so damn dirt cheap to send out email. But in effect, though, you have to think about how does that affect my brand? Meaning, do I want my brand to be associated with something that's kind of Spamish? Probably not. This is a background of companies that were polled in the data that's going to be shown. And so what it comes down to is based on that data. The click rate on mobile stats are 3.6 to 4%, and conversion on mobile is about 5%. And so it costs about $5 to $6. That's how many, that's your cost per 1,000 impressions. And an impression is considered to be that you're actually engaged with it, not that you have happened to click on it. Now, if you remember, I talk about that you can have more than one goal other than sales. And so as you can see, the goals of these companies are different. Some just want advertising. Some do want to generate leads, and others want brand awareness. I will let you go ahead and try this problem yourself. The answer is, let me see, I think it's 30%. 30% or 33%. No, it's 33%. No, 30%. Oh, well. I can't think when I'm watching a screen. But anyway, it's somewhere in that neighborhood, and you can go through the math yourself. The thing about social media is pretty much everybody, even high-tech companies, are involved in social media. And it's because social media is the constant conversation around your product or service. And just because I could talk about, like, I know, spin-on glass and semiconductor chips, to most of you, you have no interest in it. There are social media sites where you have semiconductor professionals or whoever that talk about it. And so the thing is, your interest, again, goes beyond sales. You want to build loyalty. You want to get feedback from people. You want to find out what's going on. I mean, on one hand, a lot of you didn't particularly like pitch for discussion groups. But on the other hand, you are really helping out one of your fellow students because the feedback you give him allows him to make a better product. And so by helping him, you can help yourselves. I feel like Sherry McGuire, help me to help you. But anyway, descriptors, bases, and behaviors tell you a lot about your social media group. And so not only that, but who else is posting in those groups? Your competition. You can find out what other people think. The thing is about social media is it works best when it's personal. If it's too corporate, then people aren't going to be interested. And that kind of makes sense because you have no personal stake in it. Who are the types of people in social media? What kinds of people do you find? Well, you find spectators. People just drop in and look around. You have joiners, people who want to come on board and want to volunteer for different things. You have inactives. Yeah, I don't think I've ever used my Instagram account. Yeah, it's there. You have critics. You have people who are going to say something negative all the time. You've probably seen a lot of those. And you have creators, people who do create content for others. Like on Facebook, what makes it interesting when people post different kinds of things. You have the conversationalists, the people who go in and actually say something. And so in terms of social media metrics, the thing to think about in terms of your communication is always think about, can I find better metrics? What correlates to what I want to say? So for example, mentions, clicks, and number of users is a pretty common metric. But maybe a better metric would be, instead of mentions, look for certain keywords of what they're saying about you. And you can do that in your definitions for your analytics. Instead of clicks, how many of those clicks am I actually converting? Instead of users, again, I don't want the inactives or the passives. I want people who are actually engaged. And so these are the types of things you could think about in terms of getting engagement. And so the big thing about digital media is that you can have substantial ROI because it's just cheap to do. The thing is, you have to think about what it is that you actually want to use it for, and is it appropriate, or do you need something more specific? In terms of marketing trends, what are people doing? They're bootstrapping. It's about conversation. It's about technology. And the thing about technology is they're always looking for new things to do. Let's see, neuromarketing, they're actually, because sensors are so prevalent and so good, they're actually putting probes on people's heads and see how they respond to certain ads. What are they constantly doing? They're asking permission for your information. The thing is, what is the genius of loyalty cards? Anytime you make a purchase, you swipe your loyalty card. Guess what? They know exactly what your spending habits are, how much, where are you buying it. I don't have to go pay money to Facebook or people like that. You're telling me about who you are. And also I find out what is it that my most frequent buyers like. I look for trends like that. And now we get into the conjoin and we look for clusters. Everything you've learned in this class folds on itself. In terms of communication, the goals in communication are listed here and you can read it yourself. But one of the toughest things to do in communication is persuade. And the techniques people use to persuade is either you try logic, which is reasoning. Doesn't always work because guess what? People aren't always logical. You go with emotion. You want to create empathy. You want to connect. Our President of the United States, the thing is, he does not do a particularly good job of trying to connect with others. He doesn't do a particularly good job of creating empathy. He makes one side happy and the other side gets angry. And the thing is, that's poor leadership, because leadership is supposed to be the inclusion of people. You can go negative, meaning, how did we get into Iraq? The threat of, oh, they have weapons of mass destruction. Oh, they're a haven for terrorists. Oh, after 9/11, people were scared, so they went negative, and they push you that way. When I was leaving a job, there were people who, under my management, who were very near and dear to me. And my boss was trying every technique in the book, and he went negative too. He said, oh, geez, Steve, if you leave, I have no idea what's going to happen to Melissa. And, you know, Paul looks at you like a mentor, and it's like, really? Rhetoric. Rhetoric is about effective speaking and writing, and so there's certain tactics they use in rhetoric. The thing is, rhetoric can be, some of the techniques are like about repeating words, about the pacing of how you say things. It can be very powerful or trivial. The thing is, an example of rhetoric is asking an asked and answer question, like, how stupid does he think I am? Is there digital rhetoric out there? Yes, there is. And that's when you look at the arrangement of pictures, when you look at the way they communicate. Like, one of the powers of Twitter is by only having 140 characters. In effect, that's a kind of rhetoric, because you're trying to come up with very short and direct answers. So in terms of digital communication, these are the things that you're concerned about. Essentially, the frequency, how often should I send you messages? At what point do I start becoming annoying? But at the same time, I need to send more than one message to you because I need to show that I'm engaged. And so you can read a lot of this. And one thing is, maintain a level of etiquette. There's a lot of rudeness on the internet. One thing about when you make presentations, there are a couple of things I'd like to add that I've learned over my career that's very effective with regards to communication. Don't use fonts with fillets. And that's like Times New Roman or something like that, because it's distracting and becomes very difficult to read. This is the key to good communication. First and foremost, what is your story? Your story pulls everything together. Second, pictures. If you're doing a presentation, and that's the thing, a lot of my slides are dry. They're just bullet points, and I know it. And then you can say, Dr. Cho, why don't you redo all of this? Well, what do we have, 25 lectures? There's about 50 slides per lecture, so in this course alone, I have 1,250 slides to edit. Maybe 40% of them are in good shape, so, you know, editing 600 slides, for better graphics is quite a big project. I would actually probably hire a student to go do something like that, if I had any money. But the thing about pictures is that it makes it visual. It makes it memorable. And let me give you an example. For example, I realized I did not have time to update these lectures. So, like this is like for example, let's take this slide. Wouldn't it look so much better if I had turned this into a timeline with all the dates and all? The thing is, that slide alone would take me about 30 minutes to do. And so now all of a sudden when you start multiplying it, let's take this simple one. All I did was take the same slide and just add a little clip art. What is the goal? You see a goal. The thing about these pictures is it just leaves you an impression about what the slide is about. For example, direct marketing, what do you see? All junk mail. Again, all I did is add a little clip art to it. Trade fairs, what do? I show a trade fair. So now all of a sudden papers and sales booths and personal reps, it all ties together. And so that's the power of just adding a little. That was my phone, pardon me. Yes, I know, we're all supposed to have it on mute. But anyway, so that's an example of the power of pictures. So going back to my original point, it's first and foremost, it's about story. Second is about pictures, and then it's about numbers. And that's like, can you back up what you're saying? This is actually how economists communicate. And so when you're doing presentations or you're doing pitches, these are the three things that you need to revolve around. The thing about, and this is the entire crux of communication between people, how many steps is it going to take where you're at one place and I'm in another place? For example, one of the biggest, there are lots of issues where basically people will never agree on. And I hope I don't offend anybody with this example, but it is a good political example, and that's right to life versus choice. And so naturally the people who are right to life will never agree with people who are pro-choice for the simple reason it's like you're putting murder on the table as part of choice. Now the thing is, the people on the choice side have organizations like Planned Parenthood and things like that. And one thing I told my friends who are pro-life, I said, look, one of the biggest mistakes you guys have done is you spent so much time that you just wanted to cancel it altogether. It's too big a chunk for this side to accept to this side. And my suggestion is they should have put their time and effort to create an organization for adoption that is big as Planned Parenthood. And then the next step is to create a climate and value system of sanctity of life. And guess what? That also means you can't have it both ways. You can't believe in capital punishment. But the thing is, you start to change attitudes. When you think about the number of decades these people have been fighting over this issue, they could have fixed it all. A simpler example is, give me $10,000. If you give me $10,000 in 3 years, I will double your money. Now, of course, nobody's going to go for that. That's a horrible piece of communication. On the other hand, if I say to you, Dr. Cho has a system. Basically, I find certain biomedical companies, and I look at what phases they are, and I use probabilistic models to determine how to get a 10x return. And to prove it to you, just give me $100. Just give me $100, let me try it, and let me show you how my system can create a big return for you. Now, all of a sudden, asking you for $10,000, that is a really big gap. So what did I do? I cut it down into a digestible part. For $100, maybe you take a shot at it. And that's what communication is about. This is why in so much communication, people say, I don't get it. Well, the reason why you don't get it is you're asking people to take too big a leap. You need to do it in parts and pieces. And so people can follow the small steps. It's hard for people to digest something in one big chunk. And so now what we've seen is we're going sort of like top down. The branding is what communication sits on, and what drives branding is communication. And so, as you can see, they take many different forms. And not only that, but we can do it physically, we can also do it digitally.